I'm the bad guy. I'm the bad.
So week 5 is in the bag, and it was a weekend of shocks, comebacks, and most importantly for us here in the UK, a game in London. And to break it all down, I have once again joined by our friend, Mr. Eddie Equo. Eddie, one of us was at the game this week and one of us is in our sick bed. And I think most people listening to this can tell by my voice which was which. So, Eddie, how did you enjoy your London experience on Sunday?
Oh, we cannot wait for the NFL games to come in. It was beautiful. I always look forward to these weekends. 3 weekends where I am sort of taken away from normal football and just immerse into the experience of the NFL. And it is an experience. It's why I keep going back, every single year. It's why, I brave all the traveling, for, the atmosphere, for the fans, for all the jerseys that you see on your way to the stadium. All the people that you meet, people from far and wide. I met this couple who are Vikings fan, and the husband was celebrating his 40th birthday, and they all came down, and we're like, you traveled all the way from the US for this game, and by the time they put it into context, they went to the Ireland game, also we're there at the Tottenham Stadium. And then, of course, a lot of British fans, who just absolutely love the NFL. And, it was Packers fans, Steelers fan, Eagles fans. I was standing right beside an Eagle fan, my cowboy top on, no animosity whatsoever, even though we're kind of giving each other.
Internal, and it was all internal. It was internal animosity.
It was all internal. We're all internalizing, all of that. But it was just beautiful to just see the beautiful game in London, and you've got to talk about the in-game experience. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one thing that you've got to give, the NFL, and American sports credit for. And to be fair, even basketball games are similar. What they do is that they immerse you in an experience that even though you're there for like 4 hours, it doesn't feel like you're there for 4 hours because there's so much going on. There is karaoke happening. There's all kinds of games happening, on the big screen. We even got you see a sighting of Peter Crouch. Those, who, follow football over here will probably know Peter Crouch. Scored over 100 goals in the Premier League. Played for teams like Tottenham, Liverpool. He came out and, also attempted a field goal as well. And it was all fun. Everyone is in a lovely, jovial spirit. Those that are there cheering the fans, the team, those that are there who are just there for the experience, so we're all in our different football gears from the different teams, all having a great time. Absolutely loved it. And it's also good when the game is great as well, when you have an exciting game to match. And there's been some boring ones in the past, but this was not one of them.
All I can say, Eddie, is in 2017, I went to the game at Wembley when the Miami Dolphins took on the New Orleans Saints and we lost 17-0. That felt every minute of the 4 hours. That's what I will say. It definitely, if not double. The only sort of bright spot we had as Miami Dolphins fan in that game is we had a touchdown. I think it was J.J. had a touchdown that was then flagged. So we're like, oh. We're going to get into all of that. Like normally when we do these week reviews, we'll select a couple of games that we want to go into more detail and talk about some other bits that we noticed. But today I think we're purely just going to focus on the London game. So what I want to do, Eddie, obviously I wasn't there. Obviously I live up in Sheffield, and I said I was on my deathbed for most of yesterday and this morning. But it'll be great to hear. Obviously, we'll talk about the game, but I want to hear more about the fan experience. We are a fan podcast. I want to hear from you about what the fan experience is. And then towards the end of the episode, we'll touch on a few other bits and pieces about, anything that could have, we'll touch on a few other bits that happened over the course of in the league as well. So look, let's start with the game in London. Before we go into the fan experience bit, let's just talk about the game itself, because obviously that's the bit that could get lost. And as you said, luckily this game was a great game to watch. It was one of the many comeback games of this weekend in the NFL. As we both predicted, the Vikings came out victorious against the Browns team. Carson Wentz was leading the Vikings, and we had Dylan Gabriel making his debut for the Browns. So, Eddie, from a footballing perspective, where do you want to start? What kind of stood out for you as a fan in the stadium watching the game?
Justin Jefferson. This dude is him. I would go as far as say, I know we're not doing snap judgments, but I think he's the best wide receiver in the league. I think he is the best wide receiver in the league, and he's done it no matter who's at quarterback. Did it with Kirk Cousins, did it with Sam Darnold last season. Now he's doing with Carson Wentz. It's like literally put anyone behind there. Even I could go behind in the quarterback and just
Whoa. I've seen you throw it. I've seen you throw.
I'm telling you, some of the catches that Justin Jefferson were making, absolutely ridiculous. And it's even just more exciting when you are there in the pitch. Like there were times that I stood up, like I was just like, whoa, how the heck did he catch that? And you knew it was number 18, right? Literally, when you see a spectacular catch on the Viking side, you just turn around, it was number 18 that was doing that. He's absolutely incredible. So he caught my eye immediately. Another person that caught my eye was Quentin Judkins. This is the running back for the Browns. And oh my goodness, this guy was electric. He was everything that the Browns was doing that was good. You were finding him. He was running around. He was bulldozing people. The Browns played well. It wasn't as if the Browns did not give as good as they got. The Vikings didn't have their way in this game. At some point, I thought, the Browns were going to do it. I thought the Browns were going to win this game because they were going up and down the field, and Judkins was a great part of that. All the drives that were making, everything good. And you know what? Dylan Gabriel, he looked calm, he looked poised. And I was one of those who thought, I don't know, right? He played in the preseason, he had an okay game, and then he had a not so okay game, and you're thinking, okay, let's see what he's really like against NFL defenses. And I think everyone can agree that the Browns have got a good defense. I mean, you've got Myles Garrett, there. You've got some real dogs in that defense. And for him to go into that game, and be poised, 2 touchdowns, as well, in that game, I thought he played well. He played good enough to win. But I think, this is where, clock management, a couple of things that left a little bit more time on the clock, for the Vikings to drive down, and the Vikings had playmakers. And it's funny because Jordan Addison, right, who caught that touchdown for the Vikings win, he was benched in the first quarter. So, and I later found this out. It was probably something that happened. Maybe he went out, and was late to a meeting or something, or wasn't there. So he was benched in the first quarter because he wasn't around. And for him to come into the game and then catch the touchdown, that was the deciding touchdown to put the Vikings over the Browns. And it just tells how, this game is beautiful. I remember we're talking with our Patriots fan, about, Belichick, who took out one of his star defenders, in that Super Bowl. And everyone was like, what are you doing? This is a guy that literally won you the Super Bowl against the Seahawks, where Russell Wilson threw that interception in the end zone. And he sat him down, in the other Super Bowl, which they eventually lost. So But yeah, it was great. I love that. I loved the game. There were so many good plays, so many good plays. There were. I'm sure that when they did the highlights, there were so many things that they highlighted in that piece, because it was a truly enjoyable game.
Yeah, it was, and it was a game that probably on paper didn't really stand out.
No.
If international fans were looking at that fixture list at the beginning of the season, in fact, oh, which game do we want to go to? I think the Vikings and the Browns wouldn't have been particularly high up on that. But again, as it turned out, it was an intriguing game going into it. As we said, we when we previewed the game, we were very curious to see how Dylan Gabriel would do and kind of why they picked this time to do it. And
Yeah.
I think he had a reasonable debut, but I think he steady. I don't think he set the game alight, but he did. I think he's done enough to keep that starting place, which I think is
He's starting next one.
which is which is obviously what you want. And I think Carson Wentz again did what he needed to do, but said the highlight reel was almost one man, that wide receiver and Jefferson. It was outstanding. So I mean, obviously I've been to these games in London, and they are surreal, right? I always find them as a surreal fan experience, because when we used to go to sports games here in the UK, you're an Arsenal fan, I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan, and when we go to games, we sit with our own, right, with our own fans, cheering on one particular team, whether you're the home team or the away team, right? Everyone around you is making noise for one particular team.
Yeah.
In the NFL, it's so different. You look around, and as you said, you're seeing Cowboys fans, you're seeing Dolphins fans, you're seeing Patriots fans, you're seeing Raiders fans, you're seeing everybody all kitted up. And I can guarantee that in reality, only maybe 20% of the fans there actually care who wins. Really? I mean, to be honest, you did not care yesterday who really won that game, other than our predictions. And it's there about enjoying it, being with people, and being able to watch this game, this international game that we all love.
Yeah.
But to be there and see it in person. So just, I mean, look, I think we've touched on the game enough. We don't want to overanalyze it. So talk to me about the fan experience from the positive bit. We talked a little bit, before we jumped on the recording. There's a few negatives that we are going to touch on, but tell me almost take me through a day of Eddie from the positive perspective. What was the fan experience like, and from getting to the game to being in the game to afterwards? What was it like?
So, I mean, it always starts with getting on the train. So I have to get the train to the stadium, and there's a couple of trains that I have to take. About 3 trains in total to get to the stadium, because I live in Reading. And from the get-go, you get on the train and you already feel at home, because you're already seeing, NFL fans, jerseys, and everyone's giving you the nod. You're kind of giving everyone the nod as you're walking to find your seat. And then you sit down, and then, maybe you're in a coach that's a little bit lively. A few people are already having conversations about the game. And then you're chatting about your teams, having a bit of drink as well. So that goes without saying, right? You've got to have that bit of lubrication to kind of welcome you into the game. And then I get to my first stop after the first train, and you see more NFL fans, and then everyone is like caught up doing different things. People have planned their routes, so some guys take different routes to get there. And so that whole experience is just so great, because you kind of feel like you're all on the same team a little bit. You're all going to the game to go and enjoy this game, and everyone is like got the same focus. We want to get to the stadium. Then when we get to the stadium, we want to take in the whole experience, want to go to the fan zone. at the grounds, you had the Vikings fans, they were already outside, doing their skull chants, singing up their songs, all draped in purple, and there was a collection of them, to the side of the stadium, and they were just enjoying themselves. And then you've got all the food, you've got everything around it, try and bring a bit of that American cuisine, hot dogs and stuff like that. Um, and then the stadium is a great stadium, and for those of you that know, it's Tottenham Stadium, and as an Arsenal fan, it's just, for me to be heaping credit on that stadium is really, really not something that I want to do, but it is a great stadium for the NFL. You get a great view, irrespective of where you're sitting. Whether you're up in the gods, you're sitting closer to the pitch. You just get a great all around experience. And then, of course, there's lots of screens, everywhere, so you can catch the action as well. And it's just beautiful. And more importantly is how people just relate with each other, going into the game. There is a camaraderie, about it. There's a bit of, a rivalry, but it's all very in good humor. Uh, I think for me, the NFL experience is great. It is really great, and I think we're really blessed to be able to see three of those in the UK every year, and I'm looking forward to the next one this weekend.
I bet you are, mate. I bet you are. I'm not jealous in the slightest. Did you get to go to any of the fan parks this time?
No, I couldn't. And I'll tell you why I couldn't.
Well, in that case, let's just go into it, because look, we are not event organizers, but we have been to plenty of events. We have been to big sporting stadiums. We have both been to separate times. We've been to Wembley, to whether it's to watch our own team or go to other events. I went to the Anthony Joshua Klitschko fight in Wembley. Tens and tens of thousands of fans. We have, it's not an easy thing to do, but the one thing that you have to get right is the ticketing. Yeah. And from what you were telling me pre-recording, this sounds like an absolute farce. So we'll talk about, let's talk about that first. Tell us what went wrong, and then we'll see if we can solve all the world's wrongs. But yeah, tell us what went wrong.
It was horrible. It was probably the downside about the whole experience, because everyone was in real danger of not being able to get into the games. A lot of the fans were. And so basically the NFL had brought in this new app, this year. And I think it's a great idea, by the way, to have one app, where all the fans can go and you can get all the events, get all the information that you need, for the game, pre-game, post-game, and all of that. It's great. But all of that is a little bit like the hamburger, without the actual burger inside, because the ticket is the main thing. The ticket is the thing that every fan is really, really, it's the prize jewel, right? So OnePass was the hub, and then what you had to do was you access your ticket through OnePass, and I believe this was kind of linked to Ticketmaster. Once you get access to that, you were then supposed to then download that into your Google Wallet, or whatever wallet system they had, if you didn't have an iPhone or Android phone. And then you would now get access to the ticket, and then you would then be able to get into the station. That transition appeared to have failed, and it failed at a large scale, and in many cases that my ticket portion of the OnePass app was broken. Now, some people say that it was actually the linked connection between my ticket and Ticketmaster. Irrespective of what it was, I think sort of like about 11:45, thereabout, a lot of people started noticing that they couldn't access the ticket, and hence they couldn't download into their wallet. Everybody was getting this squirrely thing, that would just go on and on and on and on, and nothing else was happening. So of course, naturally you think, okay, maybe I'm the only one that has the problem. Let me get to the ticket office and hopefully that gets resolved. Getting to the ticket office, you see a queue and you're thinking, oh, okay, maybe there are people that are trying to get last minute tickets for the game, until you walk up and you talk to a few people and realize, oh no, everyone has got the same problem, and it's the app. And you're talking about long queues. We're at that queue for over an hour and 20 minutes, right? Just waiting to get some kind of progress towards getting the ticket. The game then kicked off and we're still there. And then at that point, there was a lot of tension, going on in the get around, the grounds, because now you've got a mass of people, who are not able to get in for what they came for. And a lot of people travel far and wide, to come and watch the game, so it's not just people who live in the London area. You have people who are traveling, as much as 3 hours, 4 hours. Lots of people that are coming in from Europe as well, just to watch that game. And so the one thing that you cannot get right is the ticketing. Actually, I would even say, even beyond the ticketing, because sometimes technology fails, and that can happen, right? But I think the worst thing was the response, communication and contingency planning, or lack thereof, right? And I think that is almost indefensible, because you've got thousands and thousands of people, cramped in one place, trying to get through. There's a reason why, people get to games at different times, because you want to be able to have that traffic flow of people getting into the stadium. And there's also a reason after the games, what typically happens is that everybody can get out and get to the station at the same time. You know, excuse me, they try and control the flow of traffic so that everyone is safe, and safety is the key thing.
Mhm.
So you imagine thousands of fans agitated, the game has started, can't get in, and then they're all sort of pushing and getting more and more frustrated. That could have escalated to something that could have been, that could have marred the whole game, right? Because you're talking about safety issues, and people potentially you know being safe in the whole process.
I
And then
mean, yeah, I think just sorry to interrupt. I think that's the key point. The one thing you don't do if you're an organizer is you don't mess with people's safety,
yeah,
and especially in this country,
yeah,
especially in this country where we have an unfortunate history
hmm,
of stadium disasters that could have been
yeah,
prevented.
yeah,
And obviously, I know it's different times, it always feels like, but in the 2021 Euros final, which was at Wembley, we saw how many people rushed in, right?
yeah,
Again, that was more security and
mm,
drugs and alcohol and all that kind of stuff. But if you create an environment where, as you said, people have come from not just London, not just UK, but have come from Europe, they've come from the US, they've traveled a long way and spent a lot of money
yeah,
on these tickets, and you're preventing them, or they're feeling pressure to get in. They're going to start cutting the line, which, let's be honest, line cutting in the UK is a treasonable offence, right? You are going to be hung, drawn, and quartered in this country if you. But you're creating tension, and at this stage, we talked about people having a few bit of lubrications. You create a tense environment, and people are going to just begin to push through. They're going to push through security in order to make sure they can get into the game. So you do one thing, and that just creates an unsafe environment because there are kids there. You've got
yeah,
elderly people there. It's just like you have to make sure that bit's right.
yeah. It could have been avoided, and because at the end of the day, it was eventually they were like, okay, if you've got an email confirmation, you can get in. And that could have been done way earlier than that. Could have, I mean, thankfully they did that because they averted what could have been an even worse situation. But it shouldn't have taken that long. It really shouldn't. And thankfully the game made up, for that experience, so that people didn't feel that. But there are lots of people that are going to be, coming for the first time and will be thinking, well, if this is what they're going to be putting on show, why would I want to bother? And this is where it's really, really important. And I think it's probably fair to also say that I did get an email this morning, offering some kind of compensation,
All right.
for what happened at the game. So we'll see if they follow through with that. But I think it's the least that they could do, in terms of making steps to help people feel a little bit better that, not only did they get it wrong, but they're trying to get it right,
And they
afterward.
acknowledge it. I mean, they've acknowledged it. I mean, I'm sure when that conversation comes through, it'll be £3.50 off a hot dog or something like that for next time you come to talk. But yeah, I mean, I can never quite get why clubs, or not clubs, that's unfair, but organizations can get things like ticketing so wrong, right? You see it in, say, I'm trying to think of big sporting tournaments in the past. So say like the African Cup of Nations,
Yeah.
that often has like ticketing
Mm.
issues because in certain cases, the host country might be the very first time they're hosting a tournament like this. We saw it in the Qatar World Cup, there were ticketing issues. The
Yeah.
nations that aren't used to having these big sporting events. London, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Wembley Stadium, the NFL, they are used to having these big, big events. There is no reason, unless it is just a technology failure, and it is down to purely the technology just not working as it should do. But they should have contingency plans in place because
Yeah.
you've got fans spending a lot of money to do this. You you you've got to put fan safety at paramount, and it just seems to be a bit of a mess. But the two things to take out of it: if they've made a mistake, they need to learn from it. For the next games that
Yeah.
we've got coming up, they've obviously acknowledged a mistake, and they're talking about the compensation for this £3.50 off your next hot dog, and they've got to rectify it. So it sounds like all those things are moving there, and the good thing is no one was hurt. I didn't really know about any ticketing issues until you brought it up today. So it's not like it's made big news. You're able to get in. As you said just before we recorded, you actually got to your seat just before the first touchdown. So you didn't miss anything. And yeah, and it said it sounded like you enjoyed it, and it didn't sound like it dampened your experience going forward. But some people may not have been as lucky as you. So hopefully going forward they fix it and people get the compensation they deserve from the failure. Right, look, let's move on. Obviously, we're going to have plenty of times. Obviously, you are a lucky bugger. You've got tickets to both the other two NFL London games. I have tickets for 0 London games, so we'll be going to our in-ground reporter for plenty of these other games as we come. So let's go around the rest of the NFL now. As I said, because I'm going to lose my voice at any time soon, we're going to try and keep this a little bit shorter this week.
Yeah.
So rather than go through games, let's just look at some of the other things that caught our eye this week. And let's start with kind of a two-parter because there are now no undefeated teams
Thank
in
goodness for
the NFL. Because again, as I said at the start, this was a weekend of shocks and comebacks. But let's talk about 2 shocks, and one of them was obviously a comeback as well. Where should we start? Right, let's talk about the Bills losing, Eddie. Right, I'm going to delay this for as long as we can. Because the Bills are on the back of a surprising divisional defeat where they lost 23-20 to the New York Patriots. And again, I mean, this was a shock that not many people saw coming.
Yeah. Listen, it was a big night for Drake Maye.
It was.
Very big night for him. He looked like he had announced himself into the NFL stage. And they say that if you want to be the top dog, you got to take down the top dog. And that's exactly what he did. In the second half, he only had one incompletion.
Mhm.
So it was 14 or 15 passes in the second half. I mean, this young lad, he was like this young bull. He was good. And look, Stefon Diggs, emotional return to Buffalo. 10 passes for 146 yards. Stefon Diggs was dealing, right? He was dealing. There's one particular um there was one particular play that Drake May was being clobbered to the floor. And I think he was throwing this ball out. And guess who was there? Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs was like, if the ball is in the air, the ball is mine. He was doing everything. It was an incredible performance. It was 100% personal performance by Stefon Diggs. There was 0% of familiarity for being with the Buffalo Bills before that. Um, the Bills, though, it was just genuine disconnection, right? Between him, his players. And listen, we're not saying that, the Bills were terrible, far from it. But it seemed like the Patriots understood that this was a division game and they played it like a division game. There were no fears whatsoever about the Bills. They didn't have any inferiority complex about the Bills. It was more like we belong here. And once you saw that this was the kind of mood that Stefon Diggs was, oh, they were feeding him. It was like every time Drake May needed to get out of a difficult situation, Stefon Diggs stepped up to do that. Um, I think the interception by the defense for the Patriots also played a huge part. There, they controlled the field position, and the kicker, he nailed that 52 yards game winner. To actually take the points for the Patriots. So it was a great game, and it's one that will give the Patriots lots of confidence, and maybe that pre-season sort of speculations about the Patriots being number two. They've got a chance now. They've
Oh,
absolutely got a chance now.
I think it's a shoo-in. I mean, you look at the way. I mean, they are 3-2 now. You've got the Bills. We always said the Bills are still likely to win that division, and I think they were guaranteed to win Division 4-1. But the way the Dolphins and the Jets have been this season, how they've started this season, the Jets are just a mile off it at the moment. They've been hugely, probably the second biggest disappointment in the league, and we'll talk about the biggest disappointment in the league shortly. And the Dolphins have just been poor again. Tyreek Hill's out, and they threw away a lead against Carolina, which again we'll probably briefly touch on. It's the Panthers. Sorry, the Patriots should definitely be second in that division, and they're putting themselves in the best possible position for a wild card. And yeah, fair play to Drake May. Fair play to Drake May. Obviously, we had our buddy Matt on to preview the season, and we'll probably try and get him back on. Yeah, we'll try and get him back on. I owe him a whiskey already, which is a shame after they beat us. But yeah, he was talking about how positive they were about this young quarterback they've got. And yeah, things looking really good for them. So hate to say it, but fair play to the Patriots. Right, Eddie, I've held it off long enough. Let's talk about. You said you were paying every team in the NFL to take out the Eagles. And finally, the Denver Broncos came up trumps for you. So, and not only did they win, this was a comeback win, of a very convincing comeback win as well. I think they were down 17-3 at some point. And they came back. Bo Nix led the charge, and when it came to it, in the fourth quarter, the second half, the Eagles just could not get it done. Now, try and maintain a cool professional decorum here, Eddie. But how did you see this? I mean, apart from being very disappointed, of course.
I'm gonna use my best rock voice. Finally, the Eagles have gone down to the Denver Broncos.
I'll tell you what, I don't think Ray Johnson's got any competition anytime soon, has he?
Oh, I cannot be so happier to be talking about this game. I've been waiting for this game since week 1. I mean, there were many close calls. I thought my Cowboys were going to do it. Nope, it wasn't going to happen. Then I said, okay, over to you, Bucks. Take it away. Bucks couldn't do it. I said, okay, Rams, Super Bowl champions. You know what it's like to be in the Super Bowl. You know what it's like to beat teams, in the big stage. Come on, take this team down. They couldn't do it. And I'm thinking I'm running out of teams in the NFC. So what do? I go to the AFC. I go get the juggernaut, which is the Denver Broncos.
Yeah. Previously 1-2 or 2-2 Denver Broncos. They are the team to finally beat them.
The juggernauts, they are the juggernauts to me right now because they took down the Eagles. And they are clearly the juggernauts. Denver Broncos, Bonix for president. That's all I'm saying right now.
Well, it couldn't be much worse than the current one, could he? Let's be honest.
So listen, right? Denver Broncos, they started the game, and the Eagles are like, okay, we're the Eagles, Super Bowl champs. We're going to lay 17 on you. But what they didn't know that the Denver Broncos knew was that the Eagles don't play ball in the second half, right? Which has been their problem in the last couple of games. I think the last game, it was minus something yards that they had, in the second half. They literally don't do much in the second half, and the Denver Broncos were like, hey, okay, we know something that you don't know. And so they started their comeback. I think there was like maybe 6 or 5 minutes left when they scored a touchdown and went for 2. And at that point, most people are thinking, it's too early to go for 2, but they clearly had a game plan. And then, they took that win, and then it was 18-17, at some point in the ball game. And then it was like, okay, what's going to happen? All right. Are the Eagles going to pull off that win? Denver Broncos were like, not today, sir. This is our day. And they pull up the upset. And I don't know whether it was that much of an upset. For a lot of people that haven't been watching the Eagles game, which sadly I have been watching too many Eagles games, hoping for them to lose. So I've been watching them very closely, and they have been sneaking out wins. I mean, remember the block punts, the double block field goal that they used to win the game against the Rams. And, those things are not sustainable. At some point, you're not going to get the ball bounce in your favor. And we talk about this, all the time, about teams not doing what they know how to do best, either for one reason or the other. And we're going to talk about another team, like this. But I think Saquon Barkley had 6 carries in the whole game. I mean, normally Saquon Barkley will have 6 carries in one drive. So to have 6 carries in the whole game, I don't even know what to say about that.
He hasn't run for over 100 yards in a game all season.
No. And I said that he wasn't going to break 1,000. I think that was one of our snap, judgments. At the way that things are going, which was why I was so gutted for him that he didn't get that personal record last season, because he's never going to go close to that again. I think that has gone and it's past. But I think it was a day for the Broncos. Broncos country will be celebrating, as well as some Cowboy fans who are joining in the celebration finally taking this Eagles team down the peg. And guess who they play next time around? They play the New York Giants, who were, Jackson Dart. I've got a few quid on Jackson Dart. He might do something for me. So let's.
Well, I mean, well, I mean, the thing is, the Giants. I mean, we may as well just quickly mention them now. The Giants were sort of brought back to earth with a bump on the weekend, losing a pretty disappointing game to the New Orleans Saints, who got their first win of the season. They are off the 0 win record, as are the Tennessee Titans, who got their first win of the season. Cam Ward, picking up his first win as a professional in the NFL, as they beat the Cardinals, a very disappointing Cardinals, 22-21. So, fair play to both the Saints and the Titans. They get their first W of the season.
Yeah, fair play to Kellen Moore as well. That's a tough situation for him. So I'm happy for him to get that win.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy for both teams there. But let's talk about a team now who I mentioned. The Jets being one of the most disappointing teams. But let's talk about the biggest disappointment, the biggest shocking disappointment, I say, in the NFL this season, and that is a certain Baltimore Ravens, who once again lost the weekend. It didn't just lose; they were beaten comprehensively by a very average Houston, Texas team. It wasn't quite, I don't think you could quite call it blowout, category, but 44-10 defeat. Okay, well, we'll give it a blowout then. I'm not quite sure what the threshold is for a blowout. Are we saying more than 30 points? Is that a blowout?
I think so. Once you lose by more than 3 touchdowns, that is a blowout.
Okay, right. Then we'll call that a blowout. Just for you, Eddie. So if there are any Ravens fans watching this who want to complain, I will be putting Eddie's personal email and phone number in the comment section below. So feel free to reach out to Eddie personally. But this was bad for Ravens. I mean, defense has been poor. Jackson's still injured. They just can't get it. This almost feels like a season over game, doesn't it? A season ending game for them.
Yeah, it does feel that way. But the thing is, I don't even know if Lamar Jackson was playing, whether the outcome would have been different.
It won't change him in defense, will it?
No, it's not going to change them in defense. And their defense has been terrible. And it's been capital terrible. Right from the start. I mean, remember the game we were talking about, when they played the Bills, and that game, and we're talking about saying, what did we think about the game? And it was like, no, you can't have defense like that and expect to go anywhere fast in the NFL. So their defense, this is the third or fourth time this season, and we're only in week 5, where they've taken more than 30 points. By the defense.
Every defeat they've had this season has allowed 30 or more points. Right. It's just shocking for a team who not long ago prided themselves on being the biggest, baddest defense in the league.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, CJ Stroud looked back to his best. I mean, talk about playing a team to get you back into the swing of things. And we kind of saw signs of the Texans, the previous week, but we were like, well, we can't really trust that, they're back. But, if you've got 4 incompletions, CJ Stroud in the whole game, 23 of 27, 244 yards, 4 touchdowns.
As many touchdowns as incompletions, which is just bonkers, really.
I know, right? I mean, I don't know what the maths is that, but that's more than 80%, completion, at that rate. They scored on 7 straight drives. I mean, honestly, if your defense is not bad, I don't know what is. And you're now putting the quarterback in so much more pressure. And of course, 3 interceptions as well. But you know what? I was saying this as a preview to the game that maybe this would tell us how good a coach Mike McCarthy was. Because this is the same Cooper Rush when Dak went down, won 4 games with Cooper Rush.
I would say I understand your point. I just think that Cooper Rush and Lamar Jackson are two very different quarterbacks. I mean, Dak's a better quarterback than Cooper Rush. There's no comparison there. But you take Prescott out the team, you put Cooper Rush in. I don't think the offense changes that much in terms of the play design and the calling. But you take Lamar out and you put Cooper Rush in. It's very different.
Yeah,
right, very different play call.
But isn't that coaching though? Isn't that where coaching should come in? Other than just the talent, because you know that you're putting in a player who's not as talented as the one who's got out, right? So don't you adjust, to the player that you have? I mean, you've got a week of practice, you a week to have. I mean, when you have a backup quarterback, you plan for scenarios that you might actually need to use the backup quarterback.
I agree, and I think this comes with contingency planning.
Yeah.
Right. Look, not everybody. We talked about this when we've talked about the Bengals, who had yet another defeat this weekend. Who obviously lose Joe Burrows and bring in Jake Browning, who once again struggled because the Bengals have gone really top heavy and they've paid Burrows and they've paid Jamar Chase, and they haven't been able to afford a solid backup quarterback. And I'm not saying that's the same in Baltimore because Cooper Rush will come with a decent wage tag. But you do sometimes think that you're not going to be able to get another Lamar Jackson, but you can maybe get a quarterback who's got a similar kind of play, who is mobile, who is good in the pocket, but who can move. Well, Cooper Rush is pretty much a pocket quarterback, and he's had a very good career. And I don't know, it just doesn't seem to fit. But it's, for me, we've talked about it. It's the defense, and the biggest worry I would have is that they've got one more game against, I think it's the Rams. They've got the Rams next week. Then they go into the bye. And then it's maybe after the bye week that Jackson might be coming back. But you've got Jim Harbaugh saying in his press brief and in his press conference at the end of the game is they're just trying to figure out who they are at the moment. I'm sorry, you should not be figuring out who you are after 5 games.
Season might be over.
Yeah, it's just like you should know what kind of team you are going into it, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have a good defense, you need to obviously do as much as you can on the offense side. If you lose Jackson, if you lose Henry, if you lose these sort of players, you've got to have players. The next one up have to be good enough to take. You can't be going in 1-4 and then saying, "Oh, we don't quite know who we are yet." That's not for me. That if I was a Ravens fan, that would be the thing that concerns me the most. But
yeah, I don't know where their next win's coming from.
Well, did they play Miami? That might be. That would probably then.
They did play Miami.
Oh, fantastic! It'll be then. Right, but let's move on. And tell you what, I've let you go for long enough without talking about it. Let's round the bend and go straight into Cowboys corner. Because Eddie, you won a game, and you beat a, let's be honest, a very, very poor Jets team. Right.
Wait. Hold on a
yes,
second.
Hold on. You beat
This
a
is
very poor
an
Jets
NFL
team.
we're talking about. A team in your division. What are you talking about?
They are so poor, we beat them. Right. Right. Every team who has played the Jets has won. So look, first thing, fair play to the Cowboys, and it's a good win. And Dak, I mean, you have talked Dak Prescott up more than anybody, I think, on the internet. But he's putting up the numbers. He's at the moment, if the season ended tomorrow, he'd be in the talk for MVP. right? There's him and there's Baker Mayfield, are two of the biggest quarterbacks who are just on the money at the moment. He's putting up numbers. Yes, it's a poor team against the Jets. The Jets are in sort of disarray at the moment, but you can only beat what's in front of you, and that's exactly what Dallas did. So I know you were sat on a train, cuddling up to your fellow Cowboys fan and watching it on your phone and giving each other high fives like little schoolgirls. That was all very sweet and tender. But when you actually got to review the game properly, go on, wax lyrical about the Cowboys.
Listen, the Cowboys are back. The Cowboys.
Okay, that's enough of that. Right, let's move on to the next.
Listen, on a serious note, though, I mean, when we previewed this game, I wasn't as confident, but I tried to make a case for the Dak Cowboys offense, the Dak-led Cowboys offense. I know that the Cowboys can score points. Dak Prescott has shown me that he can score points, and there are lots of people who poo-poo Dak Prescott as if he's not a good quarterback at all. He has not been the problem, for the Dallas Cowboys. Far from it. I look at other franchises, who see a quarterback that is good, and then what do? They surround that quarterback and make sure that they put him in the best position to win. The Cowboys always feel like they want to tie their best players one hand behind their back because they pay them a lot of money. It's almost like this sort of mentality that, I paid you so much, so I can't help you to win. And Dak Prescott, you've got to say, for me, yesterday was the best performance of Dak Prescott, and I'll tell you why. Dak Prescott was without CeeDee Lamb. He was without 4 of his 5 offensive line. So the people that played in the offensive line, I don't know who they are. And I'm a Cowboy fan, right? I don't even know the name of those players that showed up on the field yesterday and held the line for Dak Prescott. And Dak Prescott was dealing. He was dealing. 4 touchdowns. He was flawless. He was throwing the ball wherever he wanted. And for me, Dak Prescott has always been the quarterback that gets all the blame when the Cowboys go down. When he's productive, he doesn't get as much praise. People always talk about the fact that he's playing teams and are not good. But Dak Prescott did this against the Eagles in the first game, right? And if CeeDee Lamb didn't drop a couple of those balls, we could have been talking about a different game. The Packers, everyone said the Packers were, a very good team, good defense. Micah Parsons, he hung 40 on them, right? So I know the Jets came into that game not winning a game, but I think that, the offense of the Cowboys has been humming with Dak Prescott. And, I cannot say, give him any more praises as to what he's been able to do. Now he's been in the league for a few times. And now, I think hopefully he starts to get the credit, because sometimes people say he doesn't elevate the team. You have, quarterbacks that can just play with anyone and elevate the team. Well, I think Dak Prescott is doing that. George Pickens, with a rookie wide receiver, Jake Ferguson, everyone was getting busy, and Dak Prescott was at the arms calling the shots. This was a Dak Prescott, celebration day, Dak Prescott appreciation day, if you ask me. Cowboys win that game. And look, the scoreline says 22 for the Jets, but it wasn't that close.
No, it really wasn't. And look, there's no doubt that your offense are keeping you going at the moment. There are questions over the defense. Of course there is. We've questioned defense all season. 2-2 and 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Record still in it. Playoffs are still possible. I think next weekend's going to be a big game for you guys against Carolina. Carolina obviously coming off a comeback victory against the Dolphins. I think they were 17 zip down at some point. So fair play to Bryce Young and the Cowboys. Sorry, to count the Panthers. We're running out of time, so the good thing is we're not going to talk about the Dolphins' defeat. I think we've run out of time to talk about Eddie. That's such a shame. But that is the sort of team though that the Cowboys, if they are playoff contenders, that they need to be winning. But there have been so many shocks and surprises over the last couple of weeks in the NFL, which to be honest, I think is good. A lot of the big teams are slipping up against teams who maybe aren't playoff contenders or a sort of one and done playoff contenders. So yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating. But I think Cowboys Corner is probably the best place for you to finish. I don't think I don't think you can really go on to anything else after talking up Dak. We'll let you finish, Eddie, on a high. So, look, it was another great weekend of NFL action. As always, great to talk through you again, Eddie. I'm glad you enjoyed your time in London, and I'm hoping you'll enjoy your next week in London. We'll be back later in the week where we're going to talk through our predictions for week 6 and also look at how we did in week 5. See if Eddie can do slightly better than his 0 for 5 last week, which saw me rocket into the lead of our leaderboard. But for now, Eddie, as always, take us home.
Yeah, so week 5 gave us drama everywhere, right? On the field, off it. Stroud's breakout against the Ravens and the ticket breakdown. The NFL gave us plenty to talk about. And if you're one of those fans stuck outside Tottenham, we hear you. You deserve better. And to everyone tuning in, thanks for rocking with us here at Across the Gridiron. Hit that like button, drop your comments as well. And, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and follow us at Across the Gridiron on X as well. And we'll see you the next time.
I'm the bad guy. I'm the